When we talk about Singapore, one of the first things that often comes to mind is its reputation for being a safe, peaceful, and orderly country. In fact, in 2021, Singapore was ranked the third safest city in the world. If we look at the crime rate in Singapore from 1990 to 2023, we can see that it has been declining. It's impressive. Singapore has strict laws and harsh punishments for various offenses, not just for serious crimes like murder, kidnapping, and drug trafficking, but also for seemingly minor offenses like failing to flush toilets after use, littering, jaywalking, and even the sale of chewing gum. Offenders will face fines or other legal punishments for these offenses. One special form of punishment in Singapore is caning, which is a legal form of corporal punishment for certain crimes. It's not like the street justice you might see in movies, it's actually carried out in a controlled and regulated manner. However, the process and the pain inflicted can be quite severe. Most offenders struggle violently after each of the first 3 strokes, and then their struggles lessen as they become weaker. By the time the caning is over, people can end up in a state of shock if receiving more than 3 strokes. Some men who have been caned describe the pain as unbearable and excruciating, even comparing it to getting hit by a lorry. They would rather serve longer prison sentences than face the physical pain of caning. The canes used for caning are made of rattan and are specifically prepared for this purpose. They have to be of a certain length, thickness, and elasticity, and are soaked in water overnight to make them supple and prevent them from splitting or embedding splinters in the wounds. The prison officers who administer caning are carefully selected and specially trained for the job. They are trained to use their entire body weight to deliver the strokes, and it is said that a velocity of 160 km per hour can be reached. The purpose is to induce as much pain as possible. They will conduct many simulated training sessions before carrying out the execution on the prisoner. A report by the Singapore Bar Association stated, "The blows are applied with the full force of the jailer's arm. When the rattan hits the bare buttocks, the skin disintegrates, leaving a white line and then a flow of blood." Before the caning is carried out, the medical officer examines the offenders to ensure they are medically fit for the punishment. If the offender is certified fit, they proceed to receive their punishment. If not, the sentence may be remitted or converted to additional time in prison. Offenders often undergo a lot of psychological distress. They won't be informed in advance before caning, and are only notified on the day his sentence is to be carried out. The caning is carried out in an enclosed area in the prison, away from the view of the public and other inmates. Offenders waiting in a queue for their turn to be caned can hear the screams and cries of those before them. The order of caning is determined by the number of strokes, with those receiving the largest number going first. During the caning, offenders are required to strip completely naked and are restrained in a large wooden trestle in a bent-over position. Protective padding is used to minimize the risk of injury to bones and organs. A doctor is present to check the offender after each stroke to determine whether the punishment should continue or be halted. If an offender really goes into shock, the caning will be suspended until he recovers. The recovery period after caning can be miserable, with wounds taking between a week and a month to heal, depending on the number of strokes received. For this punishment, only male offenders between the ages of 18 and 50 could be liable to be caned in Singapore. However, if the offender is under 18, he may receive up to 10 strokes. In addition, any male convict, whether sentenced to caning or not, may also be caned in prison if he commits certain offenses while serving time behind bars. There are more than 35 offenses that can result in caning in Singapore, including crimes such as kidnapping, robbery, murder, drug abuse, vandalism, or graffiti. It's important to note that these rules also apply to male foreigners who break laws in Singapore. In 1994, there was also a notable case involving a U.S. student named Michael Fay, who was sentenced to 4 months in jail and 6 strokes with a half-inch thick rattan cane in Singapore for 2 counts of vandalism and possession of stolen road signs. This case sparked a public outcry, with many Americans condemning the punishment as inhuman, degrading, and indecent. But the Singapore government defended the caning as a traditional part of the country's legal system. Despite the government's stance, the incident strained relations between Singapore and the United States, and it was believed to be a significant factor in the United States voting against holding the first summit meeting of the World Trade Organization in Singapore the following year. Finally, an appeal was made by then U.S. President Bill Clinton. As a result, Michael Fay's caning sentence was eventually reduced from 6 strokes to 4 strokes. Caning as a form of punishment was introduced during the period of British colonial rule in Singapore and has since been adopted by several other countries in the region, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, and some countries in the Middle East. However, the use of caning as a form of punishment has always been controversial in the international community. Human rights organizations and some foreign governments, who view it as a harsh and cruel form of punishment. But the domestic peoples such as in Singapore and Malaysia support this kind of severe penalties. And people who disrespect others are a threat to the fabric of society, and should be taught a lesson. Thank you for watching.